Hi, today we have a guest star called Robert Batty. The man, the myth, the legend. Hi, Robert Batty. How have you been today?
Good afternoon. Very good. I've been busy working up to this, so I'm coming in cold.
Oh, uh, uh, how, how are you? How's everything been for you?
Just fine. I was sick all last week, so I'm
Oh,
still maybe recovering a little bit. Some kind of virus,
oh,
stomach virus.
uh, I hope you feel better. Mark been sick too.
Yeah, I'm getting there.
Yeah. Uh, my two friends here is Skido and Mrs. Outcast.
Okay.
Uh,
It's nice to meet you, Betty.
Thank you.
Yes.
It's good to be here so far. So,
yeah.
like I said, go easy on me.
Well, when was the first time you heard of Ken?
Oh, I remember hearing about Kent Hovind back in the early 90s. That's when I was working with the Internal Revenue Service, and he was already busy being a tax cheat. And I can remember contacting him back then, before the internet. Uh, and I'm not sure exactly what the discussion I tried to get up was about, but it had to do with his tax position. And he made it clear that he didn't engage in written debates, and so that didn't go anywhere.
Oh. Yeah. Was he in prison when you heard about him?
No, this was in the early 90s. He didn't go to prison till 2007.
Oh. Yeah. What do you think of that, Mark?
Hey, Robert, how's it going?
Pretty good. It's good to see you. I guess this is our first virtual meeting, isn't it?
You and I, no, we've done a couple together.
Have we? It's
Yes,
been
sir.
so long. I do very few of these, and it's been a while. I didn't remember having a program with you earlier,
Oh, that's all
but
right. We forgive you.
I'll be 74 in a couple of months, so I don't have to remember everything.
Uh,
There you go.
well, well, have you
Now,
ever?
are you
Okay.
the same age as Kent?
He's just a little younger than me by 3
Oh, okay.
years, I think.
Gotcha.
Have you ever met Father Charles?
Only online. I've been on his
As have
show.
we all.
I've been on his show a time or two.
Oh. Uh.
Um,
Oh.
I'm
Right.
sorry. How do you spell your last name? Is it Batey or Baty?
Baty.
Ah, thank you.
Uh, yeah. Have you ever been to Dell? Dinosaur.
DAL.
Yeah. Dinosaur Adventureland.
Oh, DAL. Uh, yes, I did happen to visit there once. I think it was back in 2016 or 17. Uh, I was driving my sister back home from Oklahoma. She lives in Florida, and that was a rather convenient route. And I did manage to stop in Alabama uh, and got some pictures. We just stopped at the gate and took some pictures and got out. And Rick happened to be watching the gate that day, and we had a brief exchange with Rick. Took some pictures and left. And later that night, or maybe it was the next night, Kent mentioned my appearance in his broadcast. So I've been there, but I haven't been in and around the place. I also, on that same trip, was able to stop briefly in Heflin, Alabama, which, a bit of trivia, is where the baby home case played out. And some people will remember that Kent's man, Brady Byram, was deeply involved in the baby home case and helping the home parents promote their sovereign citizen nonsense in fighting the state over custody of their child. And so on that trip, my sister and I stopped in Heflin for a little while and then drove down to DAL before driving her on home to Florida.
Oh.
Now, you brought up Brady and the Baby Holmes case. Was Brady involved with Kent Hovind at that time?
Yes, that was when Kent, as I recall, there may be some fuzzy areas as far as time and circumstance, but that's when Brady was living at DL and working on that Kent Hovind is innocent stuff.
Oh yeah.
All those videos. Apparently, while he was working on that, he got connected with the Holmes and spent time helping the home parents.
Well, he didn't help them very much.
Uh,
Not
now,
not in the end.
he helped them promote their sovereign citizen nonsense, and that was successful, but it didn't have anything to do with getting the child back.
Right.
And I think Kent, even at one time in one of his performances or one of the secret recordings, complained about Brady needs to spend his time working for Kent, not anybody else.
Oh, that's pretty big words. I mean,
Yeah,
Brady did put a lot of work into that Kent Hovind is Innocent series. I think it's like 20 hours long nearly. It's got a lot of information. Now, it's mostly non-relevant at all and hugely just obfuscating the facts of the case, but he did put work into it. I have to give
it's
him
an
that.
impressive piece of work. It's just it's not what he makes of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Hugely misses the mark.
Yeah. Have you ever talked to Robert Batty or Kent or them?
Who are you asking?
Robert Batty. Have you ever talked to Kent Hovind and Brady guy?
I
Byram. Brady Byram.
I don't think I've personally talked to Brady or Kent directly. Kent has deferred to Brady a number of times, and then Brady you never can find, and I think he has admitted a time or two that he doesn't have anything he wants to say to me. Gonna go for it. I was on his show, and as part of that, he tried to get Brady to talk, and Brady didn't want to have anything to do with it, or he couldn't get Brady to answer the phone. I don't remember exactly, but Kent's real good at referring people to other people that aren't going to talk.
Well,
how convenient.
Here's Claude. He has some questions for you.
Oh, hello, Mr. Batty. I've followed you for quite a while and the work that you have done, and I appreciate it because when Kent makes a lot of outrageous claims about his tax and being persecuted, you're one of the few people that can actually refute him. So just want to say that for a start.
Thank you.
Yeah. And, quite, over the last year or so, he's been saying things like the prosecutor that prosecuted him was involved in this dreadful child thing. But, as you have pointed out, he had a very minor role. In fact, after the conviction, it would appear. I don't know if you've got anything to say about that.
John David Roy Atchison
Yes,
was
yes,
an assistant U.S. attorney in Pensacola,
yeah,
and it's part of what you might describe as Kent's standard operating procedure, the politics of personal destruction. He has gone after, as much as he has been able, everybody that had anything to do with his prosecution. And he never comes up with the details to support what he's claiming in most cases. And Atchison is a good example. For all the record shows, Atchison effectively had nothing to do with Kent's prosecution. He was an assistant U.S. attorney in the Pensacola office, and he did kill himself in jail after his arrest in Detroit or wherever it was. But one might propose that there's a big difference between Atchison and Kent.
yes.
Atchison was never convicted. Kent was convicted.
Yeah. And of course, we neither of us stand up for Atchison, and I'm guessing that had to do with his death. But what Ken tries to do, he tries to associate it and make it so, because Atchison did this, and so the implication is that Hovind must be innocent and unfairly convicted. And of course, that's the two don't go together like that. And then, of course, later we find out that Hovind stands up for people who've been convicted of offences against kids anyway. So it sort of destroys any vestige of trust or argument.
Right. It's a mess. There's obviously people with issues, and if Kent can find an issue, he'll try to exploit it. I think that's one of the reasons, which I find interesting in some of the cases I report on, is that Kent hasn't come up with any dirt on me, so he doesn't want to come after me, and he doesn't want to talk to me. If he could find any dirt, you'd hear about it. And I'm not saying there's not any out there, but I think it's just interesting that my adversaries online haven't been able to find any to use against me as they would like to. Another case, which very much like Kent Hovind's, involves this Baptist preacher from North Carolina that with his people beat up this guy in Montana. And they're claiming they're innocent victims like Kent. And I picked up on that story a little over a year ago and have been reporting on it. And they have had professionals trying to dig up the dirt on me, and they've gone after everybody else involved in their case, just like Kent does. And they've dug up what they consider dirt and tried to make a big deal out of it to support their martyrdom claim. And, I kind of sit back and chuckle that I'm still waiting for them to dig up some dirt on me. I want to hear what they find out.
Well, have you been getting those after retirement paychecks? The ones that Hovind said they brought you out of retirement for?
I wish I could supplement my retirement with some consulting with the CIA and the FBI and alphabet agencies to go Kent, but I'm still waiting for my first supplement.
The Illuminati, the overlords, and all those types.
Right.
The other one I just thought we could highlight was that Kent has a claim that the judge said his crimes were worse than, we have to be careful what words we can use, right? And of course, it's not true. It was actually Eric, his son, who said that he was being treated as though his crime was worse than that that terrible activity. So Kent still tells that story, which is just wrong, and a lot of his believers swallow it.
Well, that's something else that Kent is the master of coming up with tales like that. I'd like to get down to the complete story of how they came up with that, and then develop the plan to put together some affidavits and then use it somehow. I think fundamentally, Kent has said he couldn't care less what the judge said. What Kent wanted to do is tarnish the official record. And so he doesn't want his people reading the record of his case. And I think part of it has to do with that. He wants to use that claim to show that the record is not credible. So don't read the record. If you read the record, you'll find out that Kent's everywhere but telling the truth about his case.
Yes, that's right, and that explains why that it's the record. It's just very annoying. I wish people, when they're caught doing something bad, would just admit it, and then they can get on with their lives. We all make mistakes, but he doubles down on them. But is the IRS have any chance, or look as though they're interested in trying to get some of that money back from him, or to look at his current operation? Because even now, just about every day, he's saying, if you're sending donations, and speak to my fourth wife to make sure that it's going to the right place, which implies significant financial mismanagement or irregularities there.
Well, he's got a lot of different places to put his money, so it's no surprise that there might be some confusion where the money's going and how it's being used. I'm a little disappointed that the IRS has not been more aggressive in trying to collect more of what Kent owes. I haven't really tied down the date. Normally, there's a 10-year statute of limitations on collections. So I don't know if he's run the statute on collections or not. I hope not. I hope they do something aggressive to try and protect the statute and let Kent die owing the millions of dollars that he owes, and try to collect some of it, if they will, from the assets he's hiding in his corporate setups.
Oh, well, good. Look, I will let some others ask some questions. It's just so interesting to have someone who's familiar with the case from an independent view. So thank you, Mr. Batty.
You're welcome.
Welcome, Big Bad Mama.
Hi, everybody.
How
Hi,
are you?
Robert. Good to see you.
Yeah, hello.
Robert, I have a question for you, and maybe this is answered. I just tuned in, but in the event that Kent passed away and Dinosaur Adventureland is kind of up in the air, would Mary Toko have the lion's share of inheritance rights to that property, being married to Kent?
Yeah, Mary Toko's another big disappointment. For someone like her, it seemed like it would have been so simple for her to get a legal divorce. But for all last I heard, and for all I know, she has yet to do so. Although she indicated if she ever wanted to get married again, she might do that. So there might be a bit of a legal entanglement if Kent dies. There might be a lot of people fighting over the assets that aren't tied down.
I mean, could that be one of the reasons she waited to get a divorce?
Well, it could be. She's thinking, well, if anything happens to Kent, I'll be able to make a claim as his wife against the estate. That's possible. It gets a little more difficult if you're wanting to go after Dinosaur Adventureland, because those are hidden away behind the corporate veil. And now that Sandra's got her own corporation up and running, apparently, you might have her to fight.
Robert, are you up to the Supreme Court filing that Cindy, her fraud suit that was dismissed without reason from Conecuh County was accepted by the Alabama Supreme Court?
Other than I've seen a copy of it, I've glanced at it. It gets a little too wrapped up in details for me, but I'm anxious to see what the Supreme Court does. I'm not sure what the options are. I don't know the law in Alabama or how it might go. I guess it's possible that they might return it to the local court, and the case allowed to proceed to trial. That would perhaps be ideal if Cindy is able to put on her case or get a lawyer to help her with it.
Yeah, I've been suggesting she get a lawyer, but they are not cheap, as we all know.
Right. It's unfortunate she hasn't had some legal aid to help her hold Kent accountable, but those things happen.
And one more thing I wanted to ask you, then I'll give it back to some others here. But what are your thoughts on the whole supplement side business that Ernie and Steve run? Do you think that that's intertwined with DAL finances?
I have no idea.
Oh, okay.
Ernie seems to have faded from view for the most part, so I'm not sure how involved he might still be with Kent's affairs. That other lawyer from Miami seems to now be the kingpin.
Alex Alfano.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a character. Not a very good one either.
And we've got Matt Powell now on the board. Are these people that are on the board any more than just figureheads?
Yes, man.
Yeah, I suspect they're just nominees to do Kent's bidding. It's not like they were actually running an operation. I think Kent's the one running things.
Oh yeah, all the way.
Oh,
well, except for Paul Hansen did run that $500 million lawsuit.
Yeah, that went nowhere, but it gave Kent something to brag about, and it's interesting. Maybe part of why I've lost some interest is that Kent doesn't seem to spend any time anymore, or very little time, promoting his innocence, claiming it's still going on. It's not over till it's over, and I can't tell that Kent's doing anything, even worthless stuff, to try and keep his appeals going.
Yeah, he hasn't done anything to keep
and
that
I
going.
think it may be because people finally got through to him about, you need to give that up and get on with what we want to do here. And I think maybe he realized that he doesn't need to be harping on Brady Byram's Kent Hovind is innocent claims and promoting his innocence, because that's not really a winner for him.
Now he has promoted Brady recently. I think the past month or so.
Yeah, once in a while, I've seen him do that, but it seems for the most part he's forsaken that. And of course, it's all one-sided for his echo chamber audience. It's not like he's ever going to come out and publicly discuss it, or Brady Byram is going to ever come out and publicly discuss it. I've got an open invitation if they do, but nobody's coming around asking me to discuss their claims. So I don't think that's going anywhere for Kent anymore, although he may reference it once in a while as if it's a real thing. There's nothing there.
Have you heard any rumblings that Brady Byram is living at DAL?
No, I don't remember hearing any, but I haven't heard what's up with Brady lately. He's always been a curious, in the shadows kind of guy, and he worked secretly with the baby home parents. That was part of the whole cover, is that this mystery man was helping the Holmes, and it's just, I think it's kind of funny that history would have been entirely different for Brady, and in particular, the baby home parents, if Ernie Land had kept his mouth shut. Because I just happened to be tuned in to one of Rudy Davis's videos back when Rudy Davis was Kent's #1 YouTuber. And I just happened to catch where Ernie Land was bragging on Brady secretly being involved in the baby home case. He may not have mentioned the name, but he referred to the parents in Alabama and how Brady was suing the state for $1 billion on their behalf or something like that. And so that pricked my curiosity, and I started figuring out what they were talking about. And the rest, they say, is history. And the baby home parents don't like me much. And ultimately they lost their parental rights and the baby was adopted successfully. And curiously enough, they split up apparently, but Danielle Home has recently come back to social media and has partnered with some other people and promoting her woe is me tale about how the state sold her baby. But it gets a little serious in that she's wanting people to help her find where that child is, which is a big security problem. And so we'll just have to wait and see how that might develop. She's all over social media now with the help of others promoting her false narrative.
What's the status of the Glenn Stoll case?
It's moving slow through the courts. The Glenn was, of course, Kent's co-conspirator from way back. Helped him set up his phony trusts and that sort of thing. But Glenn had a separate, independent life in promoting legal nonsense through a phony law school and what they call the Embassy of Heaven. And unfortunately, like Kent, he's had a lifetime of success. Better than Kent, he hadn't gone to prison. And one of his other clients, got prosecuted for tax evasion and wound up owing a couple of $1 million or so. And the judge in that case chastised the prosecution for not going after Glenn Stoll.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so they did then go after Glenn Stoll. But that tells you something about the way things were working. They had to be pushed by the judge after Stoll had 40 years of being a tax cheat and promoter. But they went after him. And after continuance in trial, Glenn finally copped a plea and got probation, no jail time. And while all of that was also going on, there was a personal income tax case for Glenn that was kind of hidden away. And so recently,
Was it personal income tax or was it property tax?
it's personal income tax.
Okay.
What I'm thinking about.
Well, there is another case to do with
he might have
taxes on
some
his
other
house.
stuff going on, but as I recall, the way I found out about it is in order to protect the statute in Glenn Stoll's case and try to collect some money, the IRS went to court to try and reduce what they call reduce it to judgment, which would protect the statute, and then seize the property that Glenn had. And in order to seize the property, they had to go behind the corporate veil, as it were, because he had it hidden in the paperwork that it was really his personal residence. Anyway, they have sued to retrieve that property, and that's ongoing. I think a trial date has been set for later this year sometime. But typical of Glenn Stoll, he's filing his nonsense paperwork and keeping it going as much as he can. Maybe they'll ultimately seize that property. Maybe they won't. We just have to wait and see. But at least they're doing that. And when they did that for Glenn, I've been somewhat hopeful that they ought to be doing that to Kent Hovind. They ought to be reducing his liabilities to judgment to keep the statute open, and then trying to go behind the corporate veils he's set up and seize the property. But I have no hopes, real hopes, that they will do that. I think it's more likely that Kent will get a pass on that even, and the statute will run. But we'll have to just wait and see.
There's a lot of waiting and seeing in this game.
Yeah, once it gets tied in with the courts, there's a lot of downtime. It disappoints me that it takes so long to get anything through the courts these days.
I believe once they started investigating Kent, it was 5 years until they got a conviction on him.
Yeah, his case took and on and off at some point. The IRS had been on his tail for 20 years. He had the earlier tax problems that he went to bankruptcy court over, and then they came back around again with the structuring case and all that. And they finally got him, which is good. It didn't do much for rehabilitating him, though.
Oh no, he came out worse.
Yeah, he learned the tricks. Ernie finally got him to give up some of his ways, and and do his tax cheating in a more conventional manner.
Yeah. Through an MLM set up, just like all the rest of the shell corporations.
Yeah.
And like Ernie says, everywhere he goes, he's writing it off on taxes because he's selling.
Yeah, he's
Jesus face.
got the product in his trunk, so everywhere he drives, he can write off his car expenses.
That is how he approaches it, and he says so proudly, gleefully.
Yeah, there should be more enforcement regarding that. But these days, there's
one
not.
One would think that a business would be more focused on profits than avoiding taxes. You would think.
Yeah. Truth be known, Ernie Land is the biggest cheat of all of them and the most successful.
Oh yeah.
Texas shouldn't have let him off so easy when he was selling that oil additive.
Now, what was that about?
Well, him and another preacher, Mims, I don't remember his first name. I think his last name is Mims. They were involved in some gas additive, pour it in your tank and you'll get 50 miles to the gallon of gas or something. But short of going to jail to hear Ernie tell it, they agreed to pay a $10 million fine. And so they paid the money and moved on to the next scam.
Yeah, and now they're pushing supplements.
Yeah, I haven't kept up with Ernie. I don't know what his latest scams are, but
well, you can check it out. Newextracts.com is the website.
Is that it?
NUXTRAX. And it's got Ernie's address. If you call the number, it's his voice on the voicemail. It's Steve Lynn. They've actually kind of re-imaged the product. It's now the Lynn effect or something like that. The LYN effect, like Steve Lynn. So
yeah,
yeah, it's interesting. It used to be like I Hercules Gold RX this that or the other, and the claim is that it'll add 30 years to your genetic life. Not suspicious at all.
That kind of sounds familiar as to an evolved product of what I last saw online related to them.
Yeah.
It seems like Steve Lynn was finally got a warrant issued or something regarding his vehicle theft case, and that was moving forward.
Oh, really?
I don't recall the details. It just comes to mind. Has anybody know what's up with him?
Got a warrant for his arrest, I think.
Wow.
He didn't show up to court, right?
He didn't show up to the court when Cindy sued him, and she got a judgment on destroying her house. But I think he had to go to court for the vehicle stuff, didn't he? Wasn't he in custody? Oh no, he got bailed out.
Yeah, he got bailed out real quick at the time of the incident, and then it drifted along for a long time, and then not too long ago, I think I heard something about there was some movement in the case, and maybe he had fled the state and had a warrant issued for him.
Yeah.
I don't recall the details.
But I heard he was living in that same area still.
Yeah. He fled. Where did he come from? Colorado?
Missouri.
Missouri to get to DAL.
Yeah.
He was fleeing warrants when he came to DAL in 2016.
I mean, you wonder what his tie is still to Kent Hovind, if there's still a tie there somehow.
I wouldn't know. I'm sure they're still friends and probably go out to eat and stuff. But as far as what he's doing with the Dinosaur Land and the YouTube and all that, I doubt Kent's letting him have access because allegedly, Steve stole tens of thousands, if not $100,000 worth of money and material from Kent and CSE or DAL or whichever one you want to call it. So
But
I don't think you can't really trust him.
isn't it suspicious that these people keep ripping off these huge sums from Kent? Who knows if they're guilty or who's really squirreling away this money?
Right. And that may be the case, that somebody's just squirreling the money away and Kent's saying, "Oh, it was stolen. Look, Randy
Right.
stole the ministry. Or Steve stole the ministry. Cindy stole the ministry," but really they're just having backroom deals.
That's more
Who
likely.
knows? Who knows?
I
I've
have
been saying for a while that the supplement business needs a good look at by somebody who knows stuff. But because that is Ernie's and Steve's brainchild, and I know Ernie's still involved with Kent's finances. I mean, Kent still talks about Ernie frequently. And it's like, okay, well, I mean, is he done or is he not? And it doesn't seem like he is to me.
We had a flash the other day in my group regarding Chris Baker, who is supposedly handling the accounting for Kent. Is there any news as to what's going on with Chris Baker?
Oh, I don't know. I haven't heard Kent mention anything about Chris Baker. I know his Rex guy is leaving. He announced that last night. I watched his 8th anniversary video last night because there were a couple of things I wanted to see if he would mention or not mention, and he certainly checked all the boxes for me. Uh, but I was looking for pictures of, well, myself, see if he was going to put anything up of me and my daughter, and of course I was going to be like, "Hey, you can't put my daughter on YouTube without my permission and whatnot." But no, he said Rex was leaving. Oh, and you mentioned Rich earlier too. You met Rich when you went there. He had a
Yeah.
big old picture of Rich, and it was funny the way he responded when he pulled Rich's picture up, because Rich and Kent had several falling outs, and recently I think it was a big one. So I don't know why he's pulling all those up. I kind of lost my point though.
Someone
Sorry.
was asking about Freddie as well. I haven't seen or heard anything about Freddie lately. Is he
Freddie's
still
out.
there?
Freddie's out.
He is?
That's what I've heard.
I never got his story. Always wondered about what it was that he was running from.
Yeah. Well, what I understood is he got a big settlement for some kind of workers' comp deal and basically moved to Dinosaur Adventureland and spent all his money.
I have a
But
question for Robert.
go
Okay.
ahead.
It's about, this is probably an old one, but apparently there was some reports about Kent being fired from a church position for inappropriately touching a child, and his house burning down after that.
Yeah, I think I started that rumor.
Okay.
But there is something to it. And I believe there's some substance to it in that Kent was. I selected the language, purposely to excite some interest regarding inappropriate touching. It had to do with him disciplining a child when he was running a church school in Illinois or somewhere. And apparently the parents didn't take too kindly to the way he was disciplined the child. And so Kent wound up being fired. I'm convinced that's a matter of fact. I also think it's a matter of fact that shortly thereafter, Kent's house burned down, and he took the insurance money and left town. There has been speculation that Kent had something to do with the house burning down. It all fits together rather well and it's believable, but documenting the details is a little hard. It would take some serious investigative work to go back and get the news reports regarding Kent's firing and the house fire. They say that arson is one of the most common crimes to get away with. So you won't find any arson prosecutions, but you might find the evidence and the dates and times and other logistical details regarding why Kent was fired and the house fire. So
I mean, it couldn't be that
Okay.
he ran out of money and was like, "Ooh, insurance claim." No, not Kent.
Well, with his firing, it may be he realized, it's time to leave town, and that was a good way to leave town with a pocket full of cash.
Where
What town
was
was
this?
that, Robert?
What?
What town?
I'd have to go back and look.
Illinois, right?
Yeah, it's around
Peoria.
Pekin, Illinois, or that
Pekin. Okay.
Bethel Baptist Church where he used to work. I'd have to go back through my own records to see if I could find more details. Everything's getting old, and it's my memory's not getting any better, and people are not as interested. So you report this stuff, and it's hot for a while, and then it fades, and then when you want to go back and look at it, you can't find where it's at. But
Yeah,
call up Kent and ask him. I'm sure he'll tell you.
Guaranteed.
Well, that's kind of like Kent's mentor back in Pekin, Illinois, or that Bethel Baptist Church that killed his wife, murdered his wife, was a mentor to Kent, apparently. I would have liked to have heard a lot more about that to know how much of that guy's ideas rubbed off on Kent. It was interesting that guy's son showed up at Kent's place, a few years ago. And of course, the son had his own set of problems, but he did show up, and he was too much even for Kent. And Kent ran him off after a day or two. But the boy had been the ring bearer at Kent's wedding to Joe. A lot of interesting, curious details about Kent's background and how it ties together. Kent, as far as I know, had never really talked about how close he was to the kid's father and how that father influenced him in his anti-government ideas and all that, and the murder associated with him. I think it's been a while since I checked, but I think the guy is still alive, a very old man now, and living in Illinois or Indiana or someplace. A lot of his case involved mental illness and prison time and all that stuff. But I think he finally got out and is still living somewhere. Not as a preacher, though.
I have one more question, and I think I've about exhausted my curiosity for the day. But and this comes from somebody in our community that doesn't like you too much, but and I already know the answer to this question, and it might not be a surprise to you, but were you the one that contacted my parents when I went to DAL?
No.
I know. Just wanted it to come out of the horse's mouth.
Oh, I have a question.
You know, you got to be kind of clever in dealing with that because, you know, you have to be careful not to compromise anything. But I did not initiate any contact with your parents.
I'm aware. I know exactly what happened.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
You didn't hear it from me, though.
No, I've heard it from my parents. I like to get my information straight from the horse's mouth. So,
I have a question. What happened? Is this right? What happened between you and Christian Pike before? Is that okay, Christian?
Well, I have an article or two on my website about Pike, and I thought he might show up today, and I didn't review the record. I don't recall all the details, but he's one of those people that showed up at Kent's place, and it caught my attention, and so I developed a story, and we got crosswise, and
like that never happens.
Yeah, I'm kind of easy to get along with, but we got crosswise, and he blocked me, and you know, eventually the story died out, and then later he shows up on this channel or Mark's channel and other Doc's channel, which I thought was interesting. You know, whether or not he's a young earther and all that, and how much he likes Kent's views of government, but the details are on my website in my articles about him. I don't know how he stands today on anything. I haven't followed him that close. I have noticed he's become a celebrity on some of y'all's shows. And
he's a bit of a clown.
Well, I thought he was kind of interesting too, in part because he didn't seem to have any visible means of support, and yet he had a wife and kids, and he always seemed to be on vacation. And to come to find out, he's you know, third or fourth generation cult descendant. And as I recall, him and his brother bought the old family cult property and was going to be rehabilitating it for something or another. And his uncle, I think, or his father, wealthy landowner in wherever they're from, let him build a new house on a piece of his property, and he was reporting the progress on that on his website, on his Facebook page. I've kind of quit following it, so maybe the house is built now. But he was promoting it as his office. So I'm thinking maybe he was claiming it as a parsonage for his own church, so he could enjoy all the benefits that come with all of that, just like Kent. I don't know, but he's a curious fellow, in my opinion. I've just found other things of interest since we split up.
Uh, he's not younger, for he's older. For I think he might be even a little bit of evolution.
Well, that doesn't surprise me. I don't know if I had any effect on him changing his mind or if he was always that way, but he was real chummy with Kent when he went to visit Kent. So maybe he didn't like me insinuating that he was a young earther.
Ooh, this is what Claude I have to ask. You have a question about the son of Chris Baker, who recently reached out on the Hovind Worst Nightmare Facebook.
Yeah, I had hoped that we might hear more about that. Again, I didn't want to compromise or create problems unnecessarily. I did have some other private exchanges with him apart from what you see on the group page. And maybe we'll hear more from him later, maybe not. But some might remember that when Chris finally originally came on the scene, I reported that him and his wife him and the wife also with the name Chris Baker. I think it's actually Christine, but they both go by the name Chris Baker. That that they were involved in a divorce proceeding for several years. And at some point, while Chris was at DAL with Kent, they dismissed all of that. And Chris was saying that he and his wife, that his wife was going to move in with him and Kent after the school year. Apparently that didn't happen, or if it did, it didn't go so well, because apparently she's in Indiana, back in Indiana, or never left Indiana. And I don't know if there's a new divorce proceeding or not. But apparently she is not, the boy's mother that came by the group to talk to us, that Chris Baker has had other women in his life, and that Christine is, I guess, a lot younger, closer to the boy's age that dropped by the other day. And there's some funny business about how Christine and Chris got together. And so it's just like so many other people, Kent seems to accumulate. They've got stories. They're usually somewhat unfortunate stories, and their stories tend to explain a lot about why they're with Kent.
Yeah, part of Chris Baker's story is he killed a guy with a porta potty.
Yeah, I reported on that. That was interesting. I guess that was in his younger days, and it cost his boss $2 million, as I recall. And there's some rumors about what all Chris might have been involved in back in the day that make you wonder about him even further. So, what happened to him? Is he still at DAL? Is he moved off campus but still working for Kent? It's also curious that Christine in Indiana was handling the online internet car sales for Beck Toyota in Indianapolis. And it just so happens that Kent wound up buying a new Toyota for Sandra from Beck Toyota. And it's always seemed suspicious what was going on with that. There seems to be some connection between Chris Baker and Christine Baker and Beck Toyota and the car deal. Because the first thing Kent was talking about when they came back with the new car is we got a $25,000 loan on it and we need to sell it and get out from under the loan.
Ooh.
So they never did, as far as I know. I think Sandra's still driving her new car. But it seems like something strange happened with the car deal.
Yeah, that does seem pretty strange. Kent probably wasn't happy with it, and was like, "Hey, we got to sell it."
Yeah, or some kind of scam. I don't know. It never made sense to me, and nobody ever talked about it.
What else? Do you ever heard about that? What else? Have you talked to Mary Toko and Sydney lately?
I hear from Cindy once in a while, and send her stuff when I see it that I think she might find relevant to her situation. Mary Taco doesn't talk to me.
What about have you ever talked to Kent's first wife?
No, Joe is, as far as I've ever noticed, is a pretty private person, so she doesn't talk to me.
Have you talked to Eric Holva?
Eric doesn't talk to me either.
Okay.
I've tried to talk to Eric, and the last time I can remember trying to talk to Eric is a number of years ago when I noticed him hobnobbing with Cy Ten Bruggencate, and the presuppositionalism stuff attracted my attention, and I tried to engage with them, and Cy engaged a little bit, but Eric never would engage, and ultimately Cy quit and didn't want to talk to me any longer. And I've never had any serious engagements with Eric.
Have you ever talked to Stephen Boland?
I don't remember talking to Stephen Boland. I know it seems like he doesn't want to talk to me now, and I don't know if that's because we have had some exchanges in the past, or he saw from the beginning when I started dealing with his story that he didn't want to have anything to do with me. So that's another failed relationship.
Yeah. I seen this one old video where Kent was debating three professors. Have you seen that video?
Oh, the one that's got 300 billion views on it.
Yeah.
Billion, trillion,
Yeah.
zillion, million.
Yeah, I don't. There's some things about the internet that amaze me, and how little quips like that go viral and get so much attention. It's an amazement to me.
Yeah.
I don't think Kent really answered the question that was asked, but apparently a lot of people are impressed with what he did have to say.
What do you think of that mustache guy he debated? He seems more mustache than man.
The
Well, he
guy
was the
that,
one that asked the question.
yeah, it's been a while since I looked at it and tried to figure out who those people were, but
Oh, here's a question for you.
before,
Or before?
yeah,
Oh,
yeah, I think uh, it I retired in 2005, and so it wasn't long after that that the feds closed in on Kent in 2006 and arrested him, tried him, convicted him, and then he went off to prison in 2007.
oh.
And so my retirement, I guess, allowed me more opportunity to develop that storyline.
Uh, have you ever talked to Theodore of Lies of the Devil?
Uh, well, I don't know if I've personally talked to him or not. The thing about Theodore is he seems as troubled as Kent. They're just different kinds of troubles. And while he was with Kent, I was one of his big targets. And he's never fully given an account of how he was involved in Kent's politics of personal destruction, uh, which involved to quite an extent me and what I was reporting back in the day regarding what Kent was up to. They had that website called Free Kent Hovind, and a lot of anonymous stuff involved in their attacks on me and others with whom I was associated with. And Theodore appears to have been the mastermind behind a lot of that. And he's never come clean on it. And I'd like to hear more about that instead of what he's been doing. We may never hear it.
Oh,
And it looks like we've got one more question from the chat, and it comes from Dean Goldberry. Question for Robert: did you find Kent Hovind before or after you retired?
Yeah, I answered that a little while ago. Yes.
Oh, I must have missed it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Before. I just wasn't. I was nominally involved before my retirement, and things kind of picked up after, because that's when all the excitement started with Kent's incarceration and all that was related to that.
Miss Outcast, do you have a question for him?
My sound is really, really bad. So I have had very hard time keeping up with what's being said. But I do have, I don't know if it's really, it's not directly Kent related, but maybe it's about the tax laws regarding here. So DAL is a charity, I believe.
Well, it has church status.
Right. My understanding is that once you receive that, it becomes really difficult for the judicial system to have, and that would of course then include the IRS, to have any insight into the finances of the organization. Is that correct? And if so, how did they go about that at his old place in I don't remember.
One of the things I sent Cindy Lincoln just the other day was an article that came out showing or reporting that a lot of the big televangelist ministers had changed their organization to church status. And one of the big reasons for doing that is so they would not have to file any kind of financial report with the government. Otherwise, they would have filed what's called a Form 990 and at least provided some financial information about how much money they were going through and what they were spending it on. And the reason I sent that to Cindy is because that's what Kent Hovind did a couple of 3 or 4 years ago. When he came out of prison, he set up his tax-exempt corporation as an educational operation, but he got the 501c3 status that he wanted. But in doing that, he had to file a Form 990 each year. And he did that for a couple of years and then wised up and decided he'd try to get the IRS to recognize him as a church. And they did, for no good reason, in my opinion. But they did, and by recognizing his operation as a church, he could quit filing Forms 990. So all the financial information is his business, nobody else's. And that's just the way things work, like it or not. That's where we're at.
Do you have any questions, Big Ben? Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Ms. Outcast.
No, I think I will hold off. I'm very sorry. I only managed to catch about a third of that, but I will listen back later on. And yeah,
sorry you missed it.
Oh, here's a question for you from chat. Question for her.
Well, that question comes up from time to time, and there's different answers. One is you need to talk to my therapist about that. I don't know that I could offer a satisfactory explanation. I don't play golf, so I do this. Maybe some of the people in the audience will recognize the mental issues I might have in doing this. Kent caught my attention, and I've had trouble getting rid of him. As I mentioned earlier, I haven't been paying so much attention to him, but the Montana 4 people are now suffering from my attention. And I got onto their case in November of 2022, and I'm still on it. And they're asking the same question. Why don't I go and do something else? But they got my attention, and they've still got it. And why? Like I say, that's for my therapist to answer.
Hey, Robert.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Logan.
You go ahead, Big Bad Mama.
And maybe you answered this and I didn't hear, but what is your opinion on Kent's income stream at this point in his career compared with what he was making in, the 90s or the early 2000s?
Well, the trial information, indicated he was running through $1 to $5 million a year. I can't relate really, and who would know what he's able to do these days with the way he's operating. I would like to think it's a much smaller stream.
That's what it seems like. I mean, there seems to be more of a desperation now in his scams that he's kind of putting forward, making a Noah's Ark, or I mean, there's one every couple months that he's trying to push forward that seems like they'll never come to fruition, but he's trying to make money off of those.
Yeah, well, he's got a lot of personal products he's developed over the years and a worldwide audience. And maybe not so many people like us that view him critically. And, potentially he could be making more money than he ever has in his life, I suppose. Like I said, I've been following closely. I don't know how things are looking there at the compound. Does anybody know how many visitors he has during the course of a week, or how many people are actually living there that aren't convicted felons?
I don't have any idea about those questions.
Yeah, you just have to sit back and wonder. I mean, it's the same I see with the Montana 4 folks, the preachers that beat up the guy in Montana that I mentioned earlier. They all seem to be well-to-do and travel the world, and you wonder, how do they do it? What really is the income stream? I don't know, but you see them globe-trotting, living high, and you just wonder, did you miss your calling by not becoming a Baptist preacher?
Here's a question.
No, I don't think he'll ever go back to prison. I think he's too old and too clever, and the way things are going now, he's the type that they'd give a pass on prison if they did convict him for something. I'd like to think differently. You never know what they might catch him at, but for what he's doing now, I can see him not going to prison. Glenn Stoll, like I say, he had a lifetime of being a scammer and tax cheat, and they prosecuted him for one client's case, and he got probation. And to read through his case, because he's supposed to be a preacher too, he played up his role as a minister, and they treated him like a choir boy without a history of a criminal activity. And so they slapped his wrist and sent him on his way.
What sentence do you think Kent would have got if he would have just come clean at the beginning? Sorry if I missed this answer earlier, but
now we didn't discuss that. This is something Kent harps on a lot, or has, and I try to emphasize it from time to time when it comes up, is that if you watch the papers and the headlines as to the tax cases where the indicted person makes a deal, you'll see that they get very good deals because they just don't do a whole lot for tax crimes when it comes to prison time. In most cases, there are some exceptions. So Kent might have been able to plead out and maybe for a year or two.
Yeah.
Or maybe not any time. I'd like to think he'd at least gotten some time. One thing I am sure of, though, he could have kept his wife from getting any prison time, and he would not do it. He let her go to prison because he was not man enough to accept an responsibility and getting her off.
And that's probably why the kids hold, you know, at least a couple of the kids hold a grudge against him, because he had that power to keep her out of prison for the year that she spent of her life, and he didn't do it. Instead, he fought the system, and he even, you know, antagonized IRS agents and harassed them. And I think that's why he got the big sentence, was not only did he make them go to trial, but he harassed federal agents, as I recall.
Right. I think at sentencing, I think it was at his sentencing, they played some of his jailhouse tapes where, you know, he was scheming to hide his assets and do different things, you know, up till the last minute. And the judge mentions in her sentencing that there's no remorse. He doesn't accept responsibility. He doesn't accept any guilt. And, you know, that is a factor in criminal cases, is whether you admit and accept responsibility for what you did. And so he got 10 years. He might have got 300 years. You know, Kent tries to claim that what he was convicted of only called for 6 months in prison, and he makes a big deal about how they railroaded him into 10 years. But 10 years was a lenient sentence considering he was convicted of 58 felonies, and the nature of those felonies and what the statutory provision is for sentencing. They could have sent him away for a lot longer, probably should have in hindsight, but he got a good deal. He could have got a lot better deal if he'd made a plea deal, and Joe wouldn't have gone to prison at all.
I mean, wasn't he trying to get her to hide the Winnebago and all these things?
There's something about a RV that they were trying to hide away somewhere, change the title, different things. And, you know, the signs on the wall, those recordings are being made and there's no right to privacy. Some inmates pay attention to that, others not so much.
Well, they made him look really bad. I mean, you know, he's telling Joe that she's the one that needs to change, not him. And she's basically just like, yes, sir, because she just had it at that point. I think she was done.
And it seems from past experience that in so many cases, people's attitude is, I like the guy. And he preaches my position. They don't care what he did otherwise. They've managed to develop an affection for him, and they like what he preaches. And very small percentage of them know anything near what we have been talking about.
Yeah, they like his persona, and that's the only thing. They don't delve any deeper into his personality and his narcissism and whatever else he's got. I mean, they just like his kind of aw shucks jokes. And
Yeah, he's good at what he does. If the other stuff didn't matter to you, uh, he'd be nice to be around, I guess. Who wouldn't mind living out in the country and four-wheeling every day and swimming in the pond, and swinging on the big swing, free meals.
thank you, Robert. It's good talking to you. That's all I've got.
You're welcome. No, I've not ever met him in person.
Does anyone else have a question for him? Okay.
I'd be glad to consider some enterprising YouTuber putting the two of us together for a program to chit chat. But I don't think Kent would ever agree to it. But I encourage people to make the offer to Kent.
Yeah, maybe one day we can ask him that.
Yeah, I was wondering leading up to the show whether you intended to have Kent on as well.
Carl wanted to ask you questions and stuff.
Has Kent been on your show before?
No. I asked him about debating Claude, but he turned that down from my show. But he'd been on Father Charles' show before.
Yeah. I think Kent and I would get along just fine, but I think it's going to be up to him to commit himself to facing me for some casual chit chat or more involved discussion of some of the things we disagree on.
Have you ever met?
I frankly, sorry.
Okay. No, you go ahead.
No, I was just thinking. I think Kent honestly is way too much of a coward to ever be in the same room as Mr. Batty or anyone who has any substance against him.
Well, I'm not interested in playing his games. I'm interested in dealing with specific details of his false narrative, legally or even scientifically. I think we could get along and have a worthwhile discussion, digging into the details or just having a normal man-to-man discussion about our differences. But Kent, likes people to come groveling at his throne, and I'm not inclined to do that. Maybe if I had some sophisticated recording equipment, I'd give him a call and record our contact if he actually talked to me. But other than that, I'll just leave it for other people that might be interested to try and offer Kent the opportunity to face me sometime for a chat.
Yeah, that would be great. I'll talk. I'll try to talk to him and see if I can set up something like that.
Yeah, which brings back Peter to Tucker are going to go for it. He tried to get Kent to join me on his show, and Kent didn't want to have anything to do with it and referred him to Brady, who wasn't going to show up or answer calls either. So that's why I don't care to bother. Kent needs to make the commitment, and then maybe we can work out the logistics and have a discussion, public discussion somewhere.
Yeah, that'd be good. I'll try ask him, see if he would do that.
Well, let me know.
Well, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for asking me. It turned out a lot better than I thought it might. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, and thank you everybody for coming on and asking questions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Beatty.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Bye. Thank you. Have a good and safe day.
You too.
You too. Take care.
Take care.